Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Vicki Christensen with me. Vicki, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. Happy to be here.
I'm delighted because we are going to talk all about parents in the IEP process, which is something that people really actually love to learn about and need to learn about. But before we do that, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am a mom to two boys. My oldest son, Luke, is 21, and he was born with a very rare chromosome disorder. And so he was identified early on, early intervention. Out here we have through the Department of Developmental Services Regional Center. He was, I say in some ways fortunate that he was really able to receive every service, including an IEP when he was 3 years old. So when he was about seven, I was sitting in an IEP meeting and had a completely different career at the time. I was in the medical field and sitting in this IEP meeting around a table of about 10 professionals. And they were, talking about Luke and his IEP and goals and services. And I was just sitting there and assessments. And there was so much information coming at me. And I like to think of myself as a fairly intelligent person. And it was just all going over my head. And I remember leaving that meeting thinking, wow, those were all very nice people. I sure hope they do what's right for my son. And that is not how you're supposed to leave an IEP meeting feeling. No fault of anyone's, but I'm like, this, I'm just going to hope for the best. And so in the meantime, his brother was born. His brother is 4 years younger than him. And I decided to leave my job and take a course in special education advocacy. And that was about almost 16 years ago. And since then, I've been a professional special education advocate. So Luke is 21. He just aged out of our school district 2 weeks ago. So he's starting a whole new life in a community setting. And his brother is a rising senior in high school. And he also has an IEP. He was identified, he had a 504 plan through middle school and was identified and had received an IEP his freshman year in high school.
So you have both personal and professional experience at this point. And I
Yes.
want to, you actually already kind of alluded to something, and I just want to call it out here and maybe we can talk about it more, which is
Mhm.
this is a problem across all professions, I think, which is that all professions, all specialties have their own jargon. And those professionals, and I'm guilty of this too, in my work as a speech therapist, sometimes less and less now, I hope. But we all have this jargon that we assume everybody understands what we're saying.
Right.
So, do you want to speak to that piece of it a little bit and then we can go even deeper?
Sure. I will just, I mean, any parent or caregiver or, that is listening to this and has attended their first IEP meetings understands that special education is a foreign language to new parents. It is. There are so many acronyms. And now that I have two sons and I've been an advocate for 16 years, I catch myself even with clients, SLP, right? And I have to rewind, this is what this stands for. And but I somewhere, and I haven't used it in a while, I have a spreadsheet of all the acronyms that you may see on an IEP. And I'm not kidding, I think there's about 50 of them. So it's it is a foreign language.
And so, as a learner of a foreign language, cut yourself some slack if you don't know what everything means, number one. And
Yes,
then I think we're going
yes.
to get to this, but ask some questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was guilty of this early on. Like I just kind of agreed with everything. And I'm like, oh gosh, should I have been more prepared coming into this meeting? Should I know this? Um, Absolutely, parents, if you're sitting in an IEP meeting, ask questions because almost every time the team or someone on the team will stop and explain exactly what they're talking about. Um, but it's okay to ask questions. You should ask questions. And I mean, I have so many other little tips that go around that. Maybe we can get to that later, just, going into an IEP meeting, but never be afraid to ask questions. Never be afraid to, if you really don't know what's going on with the IEP or the IEP document. And also don't be afraid to get emotional. I talk to parents all the time and they're always apologizing. Oh gosh, I'm sorry in advance. I might tear up. Like, you know what? I'm a parent. Do you know how many IEP meetings I've needed that box of Kleenex right in front of me? Absolutely. There's no need to apologize. This is your child that, everyone is talking about. So, no need to apologize if you get emotional.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
What?
Because just really quickly, that takes some of the pressure off. If somebody tells you like it's okay if you tear up or you cry, I think like it's okay, you could take that like deep breath and that sigh of relief, like, oh, okay. Like it happens to other people. Wow, my advocate even cries at her son's meeting.
Well,
it's
what's
it's
interesting,
okay.
yeah, what's interesting to me about that actually is I think, and I think you do this for your clients clearly. That's a very regulating thing to say, right? It
Mhm.
will help a parent stay regulated, meaning aware, alert, and in a problem-solving
Yeah.
frame of mind, not calm, right? We think regulation means calm. It doesn't always mean calm, but
Yeah.
calm in as much as I have now access to, does that make sense what that professional just said? Is this true of
Yeah.
my child? Is this a reasonable criterion? Oh my gosh, do you want to talk about criteria for a second?
Right.
But all of these questions, right, that we're just talking about, we don't have access to those questions. Like a human being doesn't have access to higher language. This is true of the kids that we're talking
Yeah.
about, but it's also
Mhm.
true of their grown-ups. And so what I love about what you just said is like we're spreading the regulation amongst all of the adults as well.
I love that. I love that explanation. It's so true. Yeah, and I'm going to use that.
Oh, good.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I do think, well, so tell me more about your work as an advocate, because I do want to hear, because I think like a lot of it clearly is you are there as the knowledgeable, calm person in the room who's
Mhm.
there to potentially coach or ask questions. But tell me more about that role and like what are you helping parents do and what could they be doing for themselves if they are not, for example, in California?
Sure. So, I always do a consultation with any potential clients before we get started. And first thing I tell them is that I'm a parent advocate. I got into this because I've been where you are right now. I've been whether it's that first IEP meeting or a school year that's not going so well, and the IEP meetings have gotten a little controversial. So I've kind of walked that path. So I'm kind of that outside, right? So, as your advocate, like I don't have those emotions that the parents have, but what I try to explain to them is that, it's what I've learned myself is that it's a long-term relationship with the school, with the district. So it's very important not to burn every bridge along the way because I do get a lot of parents by the time they call me, things have gone south. They're not in a very good place. And it's almost always a communication issue. It really is, on both sides, I think. And that's what I found. But I tell them we really want to come together and we want to be student centered and we want to be collaborative. It is not us versus the school. Try not to view it through that lens. We are all here for the best interest of your child. So I tell, parents like I'll be assertive. I'm not aggressive, but it's very important that you understand your rights. It's very important that you understand your students' rights. And it's really important that you understand the IEP document, what it is, right? Like why it is in the order that it's in, of course, because like the areas of need drive goals, goals drive supports and services. And breaking down the IEP for parents is very important. And and also, I'll just talk a minute before they go into that IEP. There are so many things that parents can do, whether or not you have an advocate, to help prepare them for that IEP. Ask for the draft IEP document a couple days before the meeting, or assessments, right? If it's a triennial, ask for those assessments. You really want to be as prepared as possible so you have your questions, your concerns documented. And what I do, and I'll tell any parents who are without an advocate, make a bullet point list. It doesn't have to be elaborate, right? Keep it simple. Bullet points are the best way to go. Send it to the IEP team at least a day or two before the meeting, and it will make your meeting more productive, more efficient. Everybody will understand, right? And the parents will be more prepared if they can see everything in advance, and like you were said, more regulated to have access to that higher language and ask those questions and really be a meaningful participant in the meeting. Because
Mhm.
that's what I see. A lot of parents, they're physically there, but they don't really know how to participate, what questions to ask, right?
You said something before we hit record that I thought was really impactful. And so I want to ask you to say it again, which is there's an IEP team.
Mm-hmm.
Who is on the IEP team?
Right. So this is so important for parents to understand that the IEP team, first and foremost, is made up of the parents or the guardians of the student, right? So then it's everyone else who works with that student. It's teachers, it's therapists, it could be counselors, anyone who is delivering services, teaching, working with that student. But parents really need to understand that they are part of that team. So anytime that the IEP team, right, is referred to, it includes them. But a lot of parents don't, they view the IEP team as the school, the district. And I always say, no, think of it more as like a circle, right? The student is in the middle. We are kind of surrounding that student. And you as parents are, as I think I mentioned before, I believe the most important people on that IEP team because nobody knows the student better than parents.
Yeah. It's a little bit good news, bad news for some folks, right? Because like there is an aspect of like I send my kid to school so that you all will deal with them, and
Mhm.
and that takes a load off of me
Yeah.
in some ways,
Yeah.
right? And that is a completely understandable position, and also I can
Yes.
totally appreciate what you're saying, which is there's something else I want to flag here, which is I have experienced in the past professionals who think they know more than the parent about the child in question.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
you're so right to point out nobody knows that kid better than you. Nobody.
Mhm. Yeah.
They may have expertise in all kinds of other things. A speech language pathologist knows way more about language processing than
Yes.
probably you do. Fine. But they do not know your kid the way that you do.
Right. Right.
And I think there's
Very
an
true.
interesting you can get a little bit adversarial in these meetings, I think, when we put expertises up against each other. I don't know. You want to flesh that out a little
Yeah.
bit? Yeah.
And that's what I meant by it's usually a breakdown in communication.
Ah,
And that's exactly what happens. Parents say something, maybe it offends somebody on at the school, maybe it offends the occupational therapist. And then they say something back and the parents are like, well, I don't. And it's almost always a communication. And so I do a lot of coaching, even in the meetings, right? Like I've been trained in mediation. We have to bring everyone together, right? The words we use really matter, the language we use matter, and it has to be student centered at all times. So yes, parents, I do a lot of educating. The speech and language pathologist, yes, they know about language, they know about speech, so we have to respect that. But you know your child, right? And the services are being delivered to your child, so everything you know about them matters too. It's not, like I said, it's not us against you, it's not who knows more. It's about, that's when you're taking away from the student and kind of
mhm,
getting into that back and forth, and I always say bring it back to the student.
mhm, mhm. What are some when parents are reading IEPs?
Mhm.
What are a couple of things that you either tell them to be looking for? What are some things they need to know about the IEP document itself?
So anyone who's seen an IEP knows it is a very long document. I see most like what 40 to 50 page IEPs anyway in California, and longer for some students. But I tell them you just, and I do trainings on this. It's really important to know how to break down the IEP. So, for example, if you're coming up on an annual plan review, the first thing you want to do is you want to look at progress and IEP goals, right? So maybe actually I should even break it up a little bit, back it up a little bit. The IEP, it starts with, you have all the basic information about a student, but you're always going to start with present levels, right? So baselines. What is a student doing today? Academic, socially, emotionally, uh, health wise, you're going to look at all areas of need and you're going to get present levels. Based on those areas of need, you're going to write IEP goals. So you have goals addressing where a student could be behind academically, where they could be need some help, maybe some counseling. You have IEP goals. Based on those IEP goals, the student will have supports and services. So once a parent kind of understands like the different sections of the IEP, then I talk about going into that annual plan review. First thing you want to do is you want to look at progress on IEP goals. Let's look at what you've been doing. So I always say, like, make a list, right? So make a list, goal numbers, like let's say 1 through 8. Did they meet it? Did they not meet it? Look at progress. Even if they didn't meet it, was progress made on that goal? Then you want to look at the proposed goals for the year ahead. Any goals that weren't met? Are they continuing on with their goals, right? Are the new goals addressing any new areas of need? So if parents can kind of understand that, okay, baselines, present levels, we need IEP goals to address those. And we want to see progress throughout the school year. And then move ahead. There are other areas of the IEP, but I think if you kind of want to chunk it, present levels, IEP goals, accommodations, and then services. So the accommodations and the services then are helping to support making progress on those IEP goals. So I really try to just break down this very long document into parts to make it make sense, but it's tough. I mean, I think this spring semester I had a dozen clients who had over 16 IEP goals. Um, just more very impacted students, but that is a lot for anyone to keep track of. So I always say you got to keep those lists.
It's interesting, right? As somebody who has written some IEP goals in her life, it's always it's more art than science, I think. There are, and maybe you can speak to this. Are there times, in a student's life where you've seen IEP goals balloon in number versus shrink in number? How do you counsel parents through kind of this like waves? Anyway, pick me up here.
Yeah, so IEP goals, it's trying to get that balance. And I always tell parents more goals does not always mean better, right? You want goals to address the areas of need, but when you have 20 IEP goals, just understand that there's only so many hours. You're only going to get so many hours in a school day. So you want to make sure you're working on the most important goals. So, there's not a magic number as far as how many IEP goals there should be. But I think when you're looking at academics, and again, it just varies from like what kind of student we're talking about, right? Is it a primary placement gen ed? Is this a special day class? But you want to, most importantly, make sure you have accurate baselines. And those goals, I like to say, should be challenging, right? You want to push a student a little bit, but they also have to be attainable. They have to be specific. They have to be measurable. So I always Another thing I tell parents, because I see this all the time and it kind of drives me crazy. I see, the accuracy. So a year from now, the student will meet this, 80%, or 4 out of 5 trials. So I always tell parents, okay, it's not just this number that was thrown out of there. Like, it's really important to ask for the work samples. If it's a math goal, 80%, ask for the work samples, whether it's assignments or tests or the data that shows that 80%, right? Did they really meet it? And I think when you start asking those questions, then as you move forward, you start getting those work samples, those data. But the IEP is a legal document. And I think it needs to be treated as one. And so I think when an IEP goal has a measurement, if you're going to say a student met that goal, then whoever that provider is should be able to show the documentation that they did meet that at 80%
Yeah. Yeah.
or above or below. That's okay too.
Above or below, and also on what? Are we measuring homework? Are we measuring tests? Are we measuring
Yes.
across the entire semester? Like that was one of the things when I was writing IEPs. It's so easy to write 4 out of 5 trials, but like when are those trials occurring? Do they have to occur on the same
Yes.
day with the same person on the same task? I mean, the criteria matters if we're
Yes.
taking data, um,
Yes.
which we need to take because the IEP is a legal document. And so I
Yeah.
think, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about, it's okay. Go ask the teachers and ask for the work samples. I love
Right.
that, you know?
Ask for the work samples. Anytime you get progress, ask for the work samples. And then, and to your point, I like to see, like, within in 4 to 5 in a week, right? 4 to 5 consecutive times within a week. So then they're choosing a week and the student is showing consistency.
Right. Which, if your student is autistic or has ADHD, they're not showing consistency. So maybe you want to use
This
a
is true.
different measure.
You're right. And it depends on the student. Even the
Yes.
measurement depends on the student. Yeah, very true.
Yep.
And there are some days, I know with my own son, there's days are like, well, we were planning on taking data today, but today was not the day. So I appreciate that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have off days. We all do. I do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
When parents, so you kind of alluded to this earlier, when they come to you, why are parents coming to you, an advocate? Why would they use an advocate?
I think a lot of parents, I mean, so many of my clients, like, they're very intelligent people. They're very good at whatever they do in life. And they found themselves in a place that they probably didn't expect to be. And they're like, wow, I'm not the expert in this. I don't really understand, and I just need some additional help. It's not always because things are just going very wrong at school. Not at all. I have a lot of people who just call me because they don't know how things are going,
Mhm.
right? They're like, we think he's doing well, but we're not really sure. We're like, they keep saying he met all of his goals and but they're going to write new goals and everything's great. But is it really? We just want someone to review the IEP and just, give us a little help. Most of my clients I end up working with long term. But there's some that I just do check-ins here and there. Or I just come to, every few years, they'll, do every 3 years when assessments are done. Maybe they want me there. But sometimes things aren't going well, but very often parents just don't know.
Yeah.
And they just want to run it by somebody who's been there, who's done that, who does this for a living.
Yeah. You're kind of leading us into another thing that we talked about before we hit record, and I do think I want to go into it a little bit here, which is you are one of the people, an advocate, not you specifically, but an advocate is one
Mhm.
of the people, one of the helpers for parents and
Mhm.
indirectly children. Um,
Mhm.
Talk a bit, and from your personal and professional experience, about
Mhm.
the kinds of support that parents of complicated kids need.
So I think aside from everything we just talked about, like the IEP, right? And the document and the meetings, I think, and I'm actually thinking about myself as well here because my 17-year-old has ADHD and probably should have had an IEP in elementary school. So shame on me because here I am advocating and but he's getting the help in high school. But I even think about what I could have used. And I think resources. So many parents need to talk to somebody that have some resources. Gosh, he didn't pass algebra, right? I mean, who do you know out there? A good place to do tutoring or to get some educational therapy. Parents are always asking for resources. Who do you know? I have a lot of parents whose students don't have IEPs, and I'm finding right now that it's more difficult than ever to even get a school to assess students if they're kind of borderline. So my student's been struggling year after year. I mean, he kind of just gets by, a couple years behind and the gap isn't closing. I hear all the time, elementary school, now we're in middle school. I don't know, reading, math, we're still a year to two behind. I mean, I think they should be, the school won't assess. They need a little support in, maybe making that written request to have their student assessed.
Mhm.
Outside resources like even having an evaluation done with an educational therapist just to have some data. So I've had a lot of clients who the districts right now will just not assess because they're not failing.
Mhm.
And so I've had clients who, through their educational therapist, they do, just some assessments, nothing too lengthy, but then you could bring those to the school and you can show, yes, I have an outside professional who they're seeing anyway. And it maybe just, gives you some more data to go back to the school with. And I will say almost all of those students then did qualify for an IEP once the school district assessed them. So I hear that a lot. I think parents just, they feel overwhelmed
Mhm.
because, if we're talking about students with autism, with ADHD, school is one piece of what we're dealing with, right? It is one piece. We are dealing with home life. We are dealing with medical appointments and therapies and behaviors at home, and maybe trying to take our child to dinner because we have a family gathering and we know that restaurants are not easy for our family, and travel and hormones. And there's so many other things that we're dealing with that sometimes it's like, okay, now school, right? And I think that goes to your point where, yeah, some parents are just like, you're supposed to, you have this, right? I'm sending my child to school, but you also want to make sure that they're making progress. So I think parents just feel overwhelmed so
Mhm.
often, and they just need someone to help with the school piece.
Yeah.
Like, take it over. We trust you. I work in conjunction with parents, and I always ask them how they want to work. Do you want me to do most of the speaking? Do you want to just, most of it, we go back and forth, but it's that feeling of just we're tired. We're holding down full-time jobs. And guess what? Our children who are neurodivergent have siblings, and we have a marriage that we're trying to keep together. And life, right? It's
Yeah.
school is one piece,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it can become overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah. And I think, part of the reason this podcast exists is number one, to disseminate information that is free of charge, where
Hmm.
people can learn a little bit of something, but
Yeah.
also so that they can hear about what kinds of help is available, and
Hmm.
so that they can hear kind of on repeat. And I'll say it here to the listeners: you deserve assistance. It really is this hard
Yeah.
to have a job,
Yes.
have a child who's complicated, and try to do all the things. And you can't do all the
Yeah.
things. And
Right.
so, release yourself from the responsibility of having to do all of this yourself.
Hmm.
And then, in the constraints that you have, financial, time, otherwise, other family members, everything else, then we do the best we can. That's all
Yeah.
anybody can, that's all anybody can ask. And we get to think that that's enough.
Yeah.
We really, really do.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. And it's important to just talk to somebody too, when we're talking about resources, because hiring an advocate is not cheap,
mm,
right? So a lot of parents, I say a lot of the parents who might need advocates the most, can't afford to have advocates.
mm,
But there are other ways to get advocacy. And, this is specific to California, but now some of the most impacted students who are part of the Department of Developmental Services, um, they have an option to have advocacy paid for, which is wonderful. And I've started working with quite a few clients who are now, I'm billing in this way. So it's just wonderful to see more parents having access to advocacy. But there are also nonprofits out there. There are other groups, and they're few and far between, at least out here, but they do exist. And so reach out and ask and make sure you know about all the resources that could be available to you wherever you live.
yeah. Yes. And a shout out, if you're in the DMV, in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia, to Wiser, WISER, which does have a pro bono section for service provision, some of
Excellent.
whom are advocates. So, to your
Excellent.
point, there are resources available. You have to look for them sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
Vicki, thank you so much for taking this time. It was really a pleasure to speak with you. And if people want to learn
Yeah.
more about you and your work, what should they do?
So my website is blueglassesadvocacy.com. So my son has always worn blue glasses, so hence the name.
Okay, wait, pause.
And
Why blue? Just because he likes blue or blue?
I don't know,
Okay.
he's always worn those kind of like those rubber glasses.
Uh-huh.
And when he was young, it was pink or blue, and he chose blue. So we just kind of kept going. They don't come in many colors. So yeah, so Blue Glasses Advocacy, they could reach out. And I am going to start doing a number of trainings. Some of them will be free trainings, and anyone can join. They don't have to be in California. So there'll be more information on my website. And then, or they could follow me on Instagram. And I do a lot of Instagram reels on advocacy. So just more free advice kind of by topic. I try to disseminate it as much as possible. And then I did write a book, which is another could be another resource to parents, just about raising a neurodivergent child. So part memoir, part what I call love lessons from a mom, just part handbook.
Nice. Blue Glasses
Yeah.
Advocacy. Love it. We will link to all of that in the show notes. And
All right.
Vicki Christensen, thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. It's a pleasure.